Hello, everyone. Welcome to night 4. I'll wait a couple of seconds for more people to join. Okay, let's get started. So just a quick recap on the last video. We left off with King David forgiving his son Absalom from destroying his own son. Hi. From destroying his own son, forgiving him, and now that he's back in Jerusalem with King David. That was in chapter 14 in the book of Second of Samuel. Now we're going to be in the same book, Second of Samuel, chapter 15 to 17, but I'll just briefly just go through the chapters to just focus on the main points of today's message. So with that being said, so let's continue with the story. Okay. So in chapter 15, verses 1 through 6, it says, so after King David forgave Absalom, so after it happened that Absalom provided himself with chariots and horses and 50 men to run before him. Now Absalom would rise early and stand beside the way to the gate. So it was whenever anyone who had a lawsuit came to the king for a decision, that Absalom would call to him and say, "What city are you from?" And he would say, "Your servant is from such and such tribe of Israel." Then Absalom would say to him, "Look, your case is good and right, but there is no deputy of the king to hear you. Moreover, Absalom would say, "Oh, that I were made judge in the land, and everyone who has any suit or cause would come to me, then I would give him justice." And so it was whenever anyone came near to bow down to Absalom that he would put out his hand and take him and kiss him, like kiss his hand. In this manner, Absalom acted towards all Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of men of Israel. So, with verses 1 through 6, essentially, Absalom, he decided, I think it was when the 2 years, because at times bitterness can grow in our hearts if we allow it to grow, right? So through that bitterness, we can start thinking, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this against them, all of those things. So for Absalom, I'm assuming that the 2 years or so that King David didn't want to see him, didn't forgive him, that maybe during that time, Absalom grew bitterness towards his father. Because why else would he was forgiven for what he did to his brother, and he was allowed to come back without any, jail time or execution. But yet he's doing this, he's being very sneaky about it, because why does he need to go to the front of the gates, the entrance of the city of Jerusalem, to be like the hero, like, oh, if you have any problems, come to me, I'll solve them, because the king doesn't have time for that. The king has other things to do, so it's like, okay, what's going on? Why is Absalom trying to steal the hearts of men of Israel, right? So after that, yeah, he wanted to be the problem solver. He wanted to be on the good side so that the people would see him like the new king, like, oh, he will be a better king than King David. Let's go serve Absalom instead of King David, because he's such a good person. We can go to him and he will hear us, because King David is too busy. He made it seem like King David was too busy to even listen to them, right? So he was being sneaky, and essentially he was betraying his father for his throne. So let's continue in verse 7, chapter 15. It says, "Now it came to pass after 40 years that Absalom said to the king, 'Please let me go to Hebron and pay the vow which I made to the Lord. For your servant took a vow while I dwelt in Geshur in Syria, saying, "If the Lord indeed brings me back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord." So for 40 years, he stood by the gates trying to be this hero to steal people from David, from thinking that, oh, David doesn't listen to us. Let's go to Absalom. So for 40 years, this man stood at the front of the gates trying to be the hero so people can love him, right? And then the thing was that Absalom, we don't know what Absalom said to the Lord when he was in Geshur, right? During the time that David was angry at him and didn't call him back home. We don't know. But I would assume, right, by the way that he's acting, by the way that he wants to steal people's hearts away from David, that maybe he made up that promise that he made to the Lord. Like, oh yeah, I told the Lord I was gonna do this and this and that. Can I please go? So then obviously, since it related to God, David was like, okay, you can go, right? You can go. So, but this is a thing. This is a thing where Absalom gets even more sneakier. In verse 10, it says, "Then Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel. There were 12 tribes in total. As as and then he said to the spies, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, Absalom reigns in Hebron." So he went to all the tribes, and then he sent spies so that they can tell, okay, when you hear the trumpet, just say, oh, Absalom, he rules, he's the new king, so that people can be like hear it and like, what's going on now? Is Absalom the new king? What's going on? So Absalom tricked. He tricked because traditionally the new king is always put in the throne after the previous king dies, right? Or he lost his reign, but David is still alive. The Lord didn't tell David, okay, next is Absalom. No, like Absalom was doing this against his own father because in a way he turned greedy. Maybe there's bitterness towards his own father, and he just sent spies of the 12 tribes of Israel to make them all believe that he's the new king, right? That is very, very sneaky. So, in okay, so after that happened, many people believed, and then his number of followers were increasing and increasing. So in verse 13, it says, "Now a messenger came to David saying, the hearts of men of Israel are with Absalom." So whatever Absalom was doing in that moment, it was working. People were like praising him, forgetting about David, and David knew that Absalom's intentions were not good. So normally back then, um, if somebody wants to take over a kingdom, there's going to be a battle. There's going to be a battle, and David knew that if he stayed, that innocent people were going to be destroyed because of Absalom's wickedness. So in verse, it continues on. So through verse 14 to, I think, through 18, it shares how David decided to flee. He said, you know what? I don't want my innocent people to be hurt, especially if my son is doing this. Let's just go and let him take the kingdom. If he wants to take it, if this is what God wants, it's gonna happen. But I'd rather protect the people and go away so that he doesn't he doesn't destroy anyone. I don't know if I can say that word and use it. Um, so after that, so in verse 23, so after they crossed over the Jordan River, in verse 23 it says, "And all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people crossed over. The king himself also crossed over the brook in Brook Kidron, and all the people crossed over towards the way of the wilderness." So with that, it's like they fled, and let's see, okay. So and then skipping over to verse 31. Where does it start? Then, okay, so then after everything was going on, they hid to protect the people. King David was there. He was also very sad because that's his son. His own son came against him and he couldn't believe what was happening. So for him to do the right thing, like I said, he fled to protect the people. And someone who knew a man named Ahithophel, he was one of the wise counters of David. And someone saw that Ahithophel um, came together with Absalom. And in verse 31, it says, Then someone told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators. Sorry if I say it wrong. With Absalom. And David said, O Lord, I pray, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. Right? Because Ahithophel was wise. He helped David with all the things with the kingdom, the battles and leading him. So it's like if David knew that he was wise, he didn't want his wisdom to essentially cause Absalom to win, to take over unfairly. And then from there, um, so while David was worshiping God, a man named Hushai, or it could be Hushai, I'm just gonna say Hushai, came to meet him. And David told him in verse 33 and 34, he told him, David said to him, If you go on with me, then you will become a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, as I was your father's servant previously, so I will then may so I will now also be your servant, that you may defeat the counsel of Ahithophel for me. So Hushai was also a friend of David, and David told him, "Okay, if you stay here with me, you're going to be a burden to me because we're all going to stay stuck here. But if you go back to the city and serve my son for the information that is needed, um, in order for us to find out what's going on, so that we can be safe, go to him, serve him, and then let me know what's going on after." And then, so Hushai in verse 37, he said, okay, I'll do that. So Hushai went back to Jerusalem, and while he was there, Absalom was arriving. So when Absalom arrived, all the people were gone, so he didn't have to fight over the kingdom because David left. Now in chapter 16, in so some time passed we're in chapter 16 now. So some time passed, and David and his people went to Bahurim. And a man called Shimei, he was a family member of Saul, the previous king before David. Well, that man began to throw David and the people rocks, and he began to insult David. Just to briefly share, Saul, his family member, Saul was the previous king. The people wanted a king, and God was like, okay, I already warned you guys about him, and if you guys want a king, go ahead, right? And essentially, at the end, King Saul lost his reign because he would do things against God, because he was more focused on pleasing the people than God. So God was the one who chose David because God saw his heart. He knew his heart. So he's like, this is going to be the one after you, Saul. So Saul lost his kingdom, and then it reigned. Then David reigned. So even if Shammai, his family member, didn't know what really happened as to why David was king after Saul and took, not I wouldn't say took, but God gave him the throne of that he was like, you know what, I'm just gonna be rude to you because you destroyed I guess, I don't know, my family member. So in chapter 16 verse 8, this man began to curse David. He began to be really, really rude. Like the rocks were not enough, right? He had to be rude. So in verse 8, that man told David, the Lord has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. And the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom, your son. So now you are caught in your own evil because you are a bloodthirsty man. So imagine, this man completely didn't know how Saul lost the kingdom. Like he's just mad because maybe the wealth went to, he didn't get the wealth, right? Because he was part of the family. So maybe he was mad about that, or he was just like, just didn't like David. There's people that just don't like certain people for no reason, right? We can all relate to that, I'm sure. So after David heard him, David was starting to believe, like, whoa, like, my son is coming against me. I'm in hiding with all the people. Like maybe this is what God brought upon me. I don't know, right? And then And while this was happening to David, back in Jerusalem, Absalom, Ahithophel, and those that were on Absalom's side were gathered. And Absalom saw Hushai. You remember Hushai is the friend of David, the one David told to go back to serve him. So Absalom saw him and he questioned him, like, what are you doing here? Aren't you my father's friend? Aren't you loyal to him? Why are you doing here? All right. So in verse 18, Hushai said to Absalom, no, but whom the Lord and his people, all the men of Israel, choose, his I will be, and with him I will remain. Right? So Hushai was like, well, if the Lord chose you to be on the throne, then I'm going to serve you just as I served your father. But that was part of the plan because the way that Absalom was doing it was completely like done wickedly, right? Um, so so now we're in chapter 17. We're almost done. So Ahithophel, the wise counselor, he began to advise Absalom of what to do next on how to defeat and attack King David, so that Absalom can now completely have the throne. So in chapter 17, verse 1 through 4, it says, moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, now let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and weak, and make him afraid. And all the people who are with him will flee, and I will strike only the king. Then I will bring back all the people to you. When all return except the man whom you seek, all the people will be at peace. And the saying pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. So Ahithophel's plan was like, you know what? Let's go right now. Let's attack him because he's weak, he's weary, he's probably in shock from what is going on right now. Let's go right now. So Absalom was like, okay, that's a good idea. And all the other wise people that surrounded Absalom were like, oh, that's a good idea. But Absalom wanted to hear from Hushai, David's friend, because he was also wise. He also served King David. So although the plan pleased Absalom, like I said, he wanted to hear Hushai's advice. So in verse 7 through 10, um, let's see. Yeah. So it says, sorry, 7 to 10. So Hushai said to Absalom, that advice that Ahithophel has given you is not good. So he's already like tricking him, trying to see if he would not take his advice because it was a good one. It's not good at this time. For, said Hushai, you know your father and his men that they are mighty men, and they are enraged in their minds like a bear robbed of her cubs in the field. And your father is a man of war, and will not camp with the people. Surely by now he is hidden in some pit, or in some other place. And it will be when some of them are overthrown at the first, that whoever hears it will say, there is a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom, and even he who is valiant, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will melt completely. So Hushai was like, you know what? Your dad is really angry. Like he's saying the opposite of what Ahithophel told him. Hushai was like, no, your dad is very angry. You know that they are mighty men. You know all of the wars they have fought. You know the victory that your father has. If you go after him right now, he's gonna be mad and he will destroy your men that attack his men. So Hushai was like, let me scare him instead so that he can, not attack tonight. And when Absalom heard, he's like, you know what? I like your advice better, Hushai. So, so remember, in chapter 15, verse 31, David, what did David do? He prayed to God, saying, Lord, I pray that the advice that Ahithophel tells Absalom, that it becomes foolishness. And what happened? God, God not only heard his prayer, but he saw that it was good because since Absalom chose Hushai's advice, um, it was essentially to bring destruction to Absalom because Absalom is not supposed to be in any type of power. He's doing it the wrong way. So God was like, nope, this is not going to happen. We're going to bring him down. I'm going to, and he did cause Absalom to choose foolishly. Like he could have chosen the other one and it would have probably worked out, but God is always in control. Okay. Um, so, so in verse 15 to 22, Hushai just tells Zadok and Abiathar, the priests and friends of David, to go and warn David of Absalom's plan so that they may run and hide. And once Absalom took Hushai's advice, Ahithophel knew, so Ahithophel, he used to serve David. So since Absalom took Hushai's advice, Ahithophel knew that, you know what, he didn't take my advice. And I know for a fact that now he's going to he's going to get punished for what he did. He betrayed King David. So with that being said, he ended, he destroyed himself because he knew that either way it was going to happen, he was going to get executed, and the way that King David, was going to do it, it was going to be more harsh because that's what treason, that's betrayal. You're betraying a king, it's something very serious. So he destroyed himself. Let's see, but in chapter 18, it just shares how Absalom obviously lost. He lost. If you guys want to read chapter 18, there's more details. But in chapter 18, essentially King David and his people fought against Absalom, and Absalom had long hair, so I guess he was on his horse, and as he was going through the woods, his hair got stuck on the tree. So nobody, destroyed him, but it was, done, by that way. But either way, at the end, King David went back to the throne. Everything was at peace. Absalom was gone, and all those that betrayed David, they got dealt with. But now, in conclusion, through to what the Lord has shared or revealed to us today, is that what we can take from what was tried to be done against David by Absalom, who attempted to steal his father's throne by lying and by being sneaky, is that the plots that are done against the children of God by those that want to steal what belongs to us, also where God has placed and blessed us, that those are against us, their plans will not last. Their plans will not prevail. In Psalm 21, verse 11, it says, though they plot evil against you, they cannot and will not succeed. So even if a person or people try to add confusion and try to redirect you, the Lord will place you right back to where He has called you to be. And also, it's like not only through actions, but what people say. I think what people say might be even more hurtful because they're lying, right? Who hasn't, who has not made a rumor about one of us, right? It has been done to me, family members, friends. It's been done to all of us where people lie about us. They try to make us look bad because for whatever reason it may be, right? So no, even those lies, their lies will fade away. Just as things are done against us, that their lies are not going to last. It's gonna fade away because it's not true, right? So as I was writing this, of course, I gotta tell you guys a story, right? I gotta tell you guys a story. So I'll say it really quickly. So this happened like maybe 5, 6 years ago. And during this time, my son was very little, and I took like an online class, English class. So it required me to read a lot and do essays, which I don't mind. Essentially what I do is always writing and reading. So and and I was very busy with the housework, cleaning, cooking, laundry, all of that. And I was just overwhelmed with what I already was doing. But at that time, I had a family member who heard, because and I still do. But at that time, I would use like a app to sell whatever I'm not wearing, shoes, bags, whatever, anything, right? In very good condition, of course. and and he heard that I was doing that, and he had like piles of clothes that he wanted to sell. So he asked me like, "Hey, can you, sell these things for me?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I should do it because I already got a lot of things going on." And if anybody sells anything online, you know the effort that it takes. It takes hours taking pictures, the description, everything. It takes hours. So I'm like, I don't know if I should help him because I already got a lot of things going on. Like, I don't know if I can. But out of the kindness of my heart, even with everything going on, I told him, okay, I'll help you. You don't have to give me anything. But he's like, no, I'll give you something. I'm like, okay, sure. And then, went to his house, picked up the stuff, and then it took me several hours to put everything online. And it was like 2 to 3 weeks later, and his items were not selling. And sometimes sell things sell quickly. Some take months, weeks, like even a year. So it's just like you never know when you sell things online. And and then he got, I guess, impatient. He's like, oh, why aren't things selling? I'm like, well, I try to price them at a good price. These things were like from the 90s, I think, maybe early 2000s. So it wasn't so, yeah, it wasn't so like easy to sell or fast to sell. So, I try to do my best, but he just got impatient, and he's like, you know what, just, it's okay. Just, thank you for trying. I'll just have my clothes back. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So that day we went to lunch. We went to Denny's, and we were like, I was just very happy because he was always a funny person. So I really enjoyed his company. We were just talking, like everything was fine. Everything was great. And I dropped him off. I gave him back all his things. And then I'm sure maybe it has happened to you guys when you guys have a relationship with someone, like a friendship. Everything's going great, laughing, laughter, you feel the love, and all of a sudden they just snap. It's like, what just happened? Like, we were laughing yesterday. Why are you mad at me now? Right? So it's like, and then a couple days later, he texted me. He said, hey, I'm missing a couple stuff. I'm like, I'm pretty sure all of your things are there. He's like, he's like, no, I'm missing this and this. I'm like, okay. So I doubted myself, like, okay, maybe I left something in the car. Maybe because when I had his things, I had it separate from my items to not mix things around. And I checked everywhere. I'm like, no, like whatever he's describing, I don't have it. I'm sure I gave everything to him. And I told him, like, hey, like, I checked and there's nothing here. Like, I really did give you everything you gave me. It's like, no, no. Like, he started accusing me. And I was like, oh my gosh. And mind you, before like I started communicating with him, I had some family members that warned me about him. Because I didn't see him for like maybe 20 years. Like, it was like a long time since I saw him. And my family warned me about him. He's like, Denise, you gotta be careful because he can switch up on you sometimes because he did that to us. He spoke wrong about us. But since I didn't talked to him for so long, I was like, you know what? I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And if things go wrong, then oh well, at least I tried. And when he was, telling me those things, I remembered what my family said. I'm like, oh, they were right. Now I'm in this mess with this guy accusing me of stealing his things. And then one thing led to another, and I was like, you know what? Stop harassing me. I give you everything. Like, leave me alone. Like I was just fed up because I was first of all I was trying to be nice. I already had a lot of things on my plate, and I was trying to be nice, and I was mistreated. I was like, you know what? Forget about it. Block. Literally, I blocked it. Um, and and then through that, like the rumors spread around my family. Oh, the news, this did this, and I called my parents. I'm like, look, this person is saying this about me, and it's not fair. Like my parents didn't raise me like this. Like, why would I want to take things that are not even that cute? I was just doing it to help, but the whole point is that after maybe a couple of months, everything just faded away. Because first of all, people knew him. People knew the drama that he would cause. Of course, today, like I have nothing against him. Like nothing against him. So, but the point is that he made rumors about me, and it was hurtful. It was hurtful, but it faded away. What he said about me faded away because people who know me, they was just like, that's just weird. Why would he do that? Because they knew me, right? And my actions spoke louder. So, where is it? Sorry. Pretty sure it was here. Oh yeah. So remember, the lies and rumors said against us, even they're not true. They're not true. There were moments in the past where things were spoken against me, and it bothered me so much. I'm like, oh, why would this person say this about me? Like, that's not fair. That's not nice. Like, why would they say that? And it used to bother me so much that I would go to God and be like, God, this is not fair. Like, I would even cry to him out of frustration. Like, God, this is not fair. Like, why is this person saying this about me? It would bother me so much. But then God worked in me, and whatever was said against me that was not true, it helped me to not be bothered anymore. Like, if you want to think that about me and you don't know me, okay, that's fine. I'm not gonna argue about it. And that's what essentially God helps us to do. That even with King David, it happened with him with his own son, like, and even the people that once knew him, they spoke wrong about him, but yet David still held on to God, just like as we should today. Like, I hold on to God in everything that I do because only his truth matters, right? So even when those lie about us, speak wrong about us, what they say is not, it's going to fade away. So just as God was in control with what happened with David and Absalom, Absalom tried to take control, tried to lie, tried to take his reign, tried deceit, tried to even attack his own father. Absalom thought he was in control, but God was the one at the end who as always and always will be in control no matter what. And also too, for today, it's like no matter what the enemy tries to do against us, right? That even those that are against us, that their plans will not prevail, and that where God places us, we can't be moved. Like, I remember, like, growing up, like, things would happen. So I would, like, per se, like today, I wouldn't think I would be here, right? But God is the one who placed me here. So it makes it even more sweeter to be placed here, be able to be trusted with his word. Even when before this happened, the enemy would, tell me this, like this, and this, and this, try to move me from where God has placed me. But through God's goodness, I'm here. And of course, other things are to come. And in verse, in the book of Revelations, chapter 3, verse 8, it says, no man can close a door that God has opened. So today and tonight, I want you guys to rest assured, find peace, that no matter what is being done or said against you, it will all not prevail, and all the lies will fade away. God is always in control, even if it seems like the people that are against us, it seems like they're winning, right? Whatever they're doing, whatever they're saying. But the thing with being a child of God, as living in righteousness, or try to live in righteousness, God always has our backs. And just as a lion protects the cub, God does so much more. So, in just finding peace that no matter what is done against us, said against us, that God is in control. God will not allow whatever their plans is against us to prevail. Like He will stop it. He's like, nope, nope, you're not gonna touch my daughter. You're not gonna touch my son. That's not gonna happen. So, as children of God, we will always be and live in victory. Always, 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 no matter what the enemy tries to do against us, no matter anyone really, because God always turns it around for our good. So no matter that the struggles, the challenges, that God always turns it around for our good. He builds us up. He gives us strength. We grow in wisdom, understanding, knowledge, in maturity. So whatever you may be going through, just know that it will come to pass, and that God is in control. No matter if it looks like there's no way out or it seems impossible or whatever's being said or done against you, that God is always in control. Remember, remember, the enemy has to ask permission, okay? The enemy has to ask permission to God for certain things to happen. And yet, even when God says yes, he knows that God will get all the glory and that the enemy will not prevail. Okay, so that's something that I always hold on to. Like when anything is going wrong, I'm like, Lord, I thank you for the victory that is going to come. Because not only is this going to be for my good, but I'm going to walk in victory. So I hope this message helps you guys. So I hope you guys have a great night. And I see you guys next week, hopefully for night 5. Bye.